I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. This episode is for anyone and everyone who has ever thought once, twice, or 1,000 times, maybe I should quit, fill in the blank. In order to become an entrepreneur, you have to be a little crazy, in my opinion. I always visualize an amusement park as an analogy. Entrepreneurs are getting in line for the biggest, most intense roller coaster ride in the park. You know for a fact that you will have huge ups and huge downs, sometimes within minutes of each other. You're signing up for that ride when you start your own business. Russ Perry is on the show today, and he believes you have to be some sort of an addict to become an entrepreneur. Whether that's being addicted to your business, to results, to recognition, to success, or oftentimes that comes with other types of traditional addictions, like to alcohol and everything else in the book. In this episode, Russ talks very openly about his path to sobriety, how his addiction almost imploded his life and ruined his marriage. But it didn't. What he managed to do was change his family tree and change his life. As a result of gaining sobriety and clarity, Russ has gone from freelancing to growing a company called Design Pickle that generates $500,000 a month. As someone who has an addictive personality myself, I found Russ's new book, The Sober Entrepreneur, refreshing. It's the ultimate life hack. You can get it for free on Amazon Kindle the week this episode airs, or visit soberentrepreneur.com to order the book and read the first chapter for free. Before we get started, I want to tell you about my partners at Design Pickle. You know when you're in a pickle because you need a design, but you don't have the time or maybe even the skill to do it yourself. Many of us have been there. Design Pickle has been a lifesaver for me. Here's how they're set up. You pay a flat rate monthly fee, and you're given a dedicated designer for all of your needs. You heard that right. Unlimited graphic designs, unlimited requests, and the first 14 days are risk-free. You get a full refund if you cancel in the first 2 weeks. Why Not Now listeners like yourself get 30% off their first month. You can go to designpickle.com/why not now to redeem the offer. For me, the process has been painless and ego-free. In fact, many of the posts you're seeing on my social media channels were created by my buddies at Design Pickle, specifically Jacob at Design Pickle. That's what's cool, is that you get a dedicated designer. I'm on a first-name basis with my designer. A mentor once said to me, just because you can doesn't always mean you should. Do what you're uniquely qualified to do. Design Pickle helps me do just that. Go to designpickle.com/why not now to redeem the offer. We tackle the most taboo topics on the Why Not Now show. Oftentimes, you're hearing guests share things they've never shared before. In the spirit of things we don't typically talk about, you should know that the Why Not Now show is supported by Poo-Pourri. Yep, the original before you go toilet spray. It's magic. My friends at Poo-Pourri have literally taken the smell out of you know what. This pure blend of essential oils stops bathroom odor before it begins. Visit poopourri.com, and Why Not Now listeners get 20% off with code Why Not Now. That's all one word. Also, you can now get Poopery at Target. Russ, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
I am pretty good, but as we were chatting a little bit ago, a little anxious for this weekend.
You have a big race. Well, let's touch on that. But before we do, let's start off. And can you tell me about a time when you had to ask yourself, why not now?
Well, going into this interview, as I'm sure every guest does, I thought a lot about this moment in question. And I would have to say it was the pivotal moment in my life as an adult in which I decided to become sober. And this moment wasn't after some crazy fallout or bender or bad decision, which believe me, there had been many of those in my relationship with drinking and alcohol. It was actually in a moment where I was reading a biography, actually an autobiography that my grandma had written. She had passed away maybe 2 or 3 years prior to me reading this. And I was reading this book to my daughters, and they were, I believe, 9 and 2 at the time, roughly. And I was going through reading about my family history, and I had this a realization, because this was a book that I had read many times from when she first gave it to me to when she'd passed away. And it just was this really great family relic that I have, documenting my immigration from Germany on my dad's side to Arizona and all the stories in between. But I noticed this really disturbing theme with all the men that she didn't necessarily give that great of a portrayal, that died, got arrested, or had some issue with alcohol or gambling. And it was this startling moment where I was like, what would my family write about me on the current path that I'm on? Because this was my grandma writing about her dad and her grandfather, and it wasn't flattering at all, not to mention her brothers and even to some extent some of her sons and cousins. And I was like, I need to change the course of my life. Like, I need to not be having this doing what I'm doing, especially around my addiction, which I was definitely aware of but was avoiding. And so my why not now moment was just at that moment making the literally, like, today is the last day I am going to drink. And that was on October 22nd, 2013. And I haven't had a drop since.
Wow. First off, how awesome that you had this documentation. I mean, that's power in itself that you were able to access that. And so many of us don't. Wow. So this wasn't a cause and effect, the night before there was a big incident or anything. But having read the first part of your book, I know that it had led up to this point. And would you say it was a brewing why not now? Would you say that you really hadn't considered stopping drinking until truly that moment? When did it kind of come into your awareness or your consciousness?
I think anyone who struggles with any form of addiction, whether it's alcohol or anything, I think throughout our conversation, I'll reference alcohol, but as we've discussed prior, there's lots of different kinds of addiction. There's the short-term kind of acute pain, and then there's the long-term pain. And the long-term pain is really hard to see, because that's the 10-year marriage falling apart, like, suddenly. Well, it's not actually suddenly. It happened over a long period of time. That's the 40 pounds you've gained since college. Like, it's not immediate. It happens over time. And so for me with alcohol, I was always aware of the short-term pains, the hangover, the fights, the bad decisions. I'll just come out with it. In my book, first chapter, I talk about an affair that I had. And, like, even though that was definitely a brewing decision, those were all, like, in the moment now kind of pains. And so you do try to quit often when you experience those pains, but it's never permanent until we acknowledge and kind of, at least in my opinion, surrender to what the long-term consequences could be. And that to me was what I became drastically aware of when I read that autobiography. Was here is the literal last remaining documentation of these people's lives, and this is what was written about them. I do not at all want that for me and my children and my grandchildren. I want to change my family tree. And that was that long-term sort of eternal viewpoint was what has been still to this day, what has anchored me, and actually in the flip side made quitting pretty easy, because I had such a, like, not quitting was so dramatically terrible because of just thinking about what had happened to some of my family ancestors.
The family tree concept, and reading about this in the book, of you're able to grow a new branch and change the story and kind of turn a new leaf. I thought that was really, really cool concept of you don't have to be a victim of this trajectory, right? And having realized that, it's amazing. That was the thing that really caused you to commit to a shift versus some of these, as you refer to them as acute pain, which I know very well. And having, I think most people, and some of us more so than others, or maybe more severe, and we all have our stories, but we think that's the motivation. And like you, when I stopped drinking, for a year and a half or so, it wasn't after one of the mornings where you'd wake up going, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that, or XYZ. It was actually a different scenario. So that's a really interesting way to look at the why not now. It wasn't a severity, acute cause and effect. It was actually the long-term sank in, it seems like, and you were able to have this bigger picture.
And I actually have to give credit where credit is due. The changing the family tree concept didn't come until about, well, it really was illuminated when I read that book. And that was after my wife and I had really been on the mend from some of the really destructive decisions I had made when I was drinking, one of which was an affair. And immediately after the affair, we were like just searching for answers, both her and I. And one of the things that we decided to do is like, well, you know what? Let's go back to church. Like, her and I had never gone to church as adults. We were both raised in Tucson, Arizona, and had attended different churches there as children and in high school. But we're like, you know what? It can't hurt. Like, we're already at rock bottom. like let's just see what goes on. But we were in such a painful spot that we did not attend together. It was like, you're going to go to this service and I'm going to go to this service, because, rightfully so, my wife did not want to be around me. So I went to the afternoon night service, which I soon discovered was kind of like the reject service. It wasn't even like a live sermon. It was a recording from earlier in the day. But I kid you not, Amy Jo, this is like what gives me goosebumps even as I tell you this. The very first sermon after I hadn't been to church in probably a decade, maybe, was Change Your Family Tree. Wow. And it was Pastor Lynn Winters at Cornerstone Church in Chandler, Arizona. And it was this concept of it does not matter what has happened in the past, because your kids and your grandkids and the great grandkids are only going to know your story. So you can change your family tree. And I was crying in the back. I was like, oh my gosh, like, how did they know? Like, this is crazy. And then, things got better. And then again, when I read that autobiography, that's when the ink dried and I saw it connected back to that sermon, to this decision. I was like, look, I'm never going to change my family tree unless I break the cycle that has really been plaguing my entire family for generations.
Isn't that just wild and so awesome to see the universe working in that
Oh
way.
man, it's crazy. It's like
There's no denying
I got
that.
goosebumps and teary-eyed like telling you about it right now, just sitting here.
Yeah, there's no denying there's a message that wanted to land on you. And that's pretty incredible. There's so many areas I want to explore with you, and one of which, because the book is titled The Sober Entrepreneur, but also being an entrepreneur, and a lot of entrepreneurs listening and or those who are getting ready to take on that path. How do you feel the relationship between sobriety and entrepreneurship, any kind of sobriety, take place versus non-entrepreneurs? As you examine this closer, what's the difference in relationship?
Well, I believe to pursue the path of entrepreneurship, you have to be an addict. Everyone is an addict who pursues the path of a vision of creating something and a path for themselves. And that initial addiction is to your idea. It's to the better vision of what you want to create in the world, whether that's an app, a service, a movement. And so the deck is already stacked against entrepreneurs in that capacity around the topic of addiction, because the only way for us to succeed, we have to do crazy things and take crazy risks in order to win. My first business, I left the most cush job ever at Apple, working on a fast track path to management and leadership and all of this, so that I could pursue this crazy idea of doing a creative agency. Because I was addicted to that vision and that lifestyle and that new possibility. What ends up getting murky, though, is that risk tolerance grows and grows and grows, and then we end up finding ourselves without a lot of resources and education in managing the downside of entrepreneurship, which is the stress and the failure and the, hey, honey, I'm sorry, we don't have any money right now for this. Just trust me and believe in me. And all of the shit that comes with entrepreneurship, we're not equipped to handle. And at least in my case, I sought out the short-term solutions in sedation, and that was the way I coped with that. But I already have this addictive personality. I'm kind of a high performer in general in terms of, getting things done. So it just created an eventual spiral of destruction that, not saying it happens to everyone, but it is higher probability with entrepreneurs because of our inherent natural addictive nature.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And that's why I'm so passionate about supporting you in this message and hoping that, entrepreneurs read this, even if they think, just to better understand maybe their own wiring, because it's the two are just tight cousins that don't necessarily help each other. And
an addiction, any form of addiction or chemical is like chemical release. We become hooked on the dopamine release and the feel-good chemicals in the brain when we perform a certain action. Now, specific substances, this is biomechanically triggered, like in terms of alcohol, to some extent, cocaine, weed, things like that. But the same biochemical reaction can occur in entrepreneurial environments. Like if you've ever closed a huge deal or won a big account or took some risk and it paid off, what do you get? You get a rush of those feel-good chemicals too. So we're engaging in the same sort of risk-reward behavior as you would with a substance in our professional life. And so this is why the book is called Sober Entrepreneurs, because it's not just about my personal journey. It's about literally getting addicted to business as you would alcohol, drugs, or porn, or whatever else.
I'm referring to the title correctly. Is that right? The Sober Entrepreneur? Or is it Sober Entrepreneurs? Okay, that's what I thought.
I own both domains, so it doesn't
matter. Okay. Okay, cool. So with entrepreneurs in general, and I know kind of at the height and when things were so busy in my life and running my company, I definitely turned to alcohol for an escape, for kind of continuing to chase that rock star happiness, that rock star high of just feeling on top. But we think we're invincible sometimes, right? And as you follow this along, and I think it's fascinating the steps that you map out in the book of, it wasn't this time that made me realize, aha, why not now stop drinking? And it wasn't this time, and it was actually a much bigger, more calm scenario in which you decided. What happened after? So Peter Shankman, who is an incredible mind himself, wrote your foreword. And one of the things he says is, to be at the top of your game, you can't have distractions. And the biggest distraction comes from not truly knowing yourself. And that was, when I read that was like, wow, so true. And that's exactly what we're doing when we're addicted to something. We're distracting ourselves. So do you feel like what happened next? Did you dig down and start learning more about yourself? Or how did that work? Did you go to therapy? Did you? Yeah.
Well, I will jump into some of the tactics, because I hope there's some people out here listening that I can help and we can help through this conversation. And then I'll get a little more theoretical, because I think there's a bigger concept. But I did look for a support group right out of the gates, because I had tried to quit before. It didn't work. And all of those times were just me by myself trying to strong arm it like a muscle, arm wrestling match against someone much stronger than me, i.e. like biomechanical and decades of bad habits. So I actually found, I had gone to AA, which I love, Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was really hardcore for me. And just in the sense of, I wasn't spiraling into oblivion at that point. Like we talked about, like things were okay. Like they weren't crazy. I hadn't gotten a DUI. There wasn't some arrest or some, lost every dollar. It was just, I knew there was a problem. I needed to get help. I actually found a bit of more of like I call it like the PG in the sense of the experience, but it's still very, very serious program called Celebrate Recovery, which was actually it's like a Christian spinoff of AA, which was at that same church that I had started attending. So when I made the decision to get sober, I was like, I already see advertisements for this Celebrate Recovery program. And I attended that for a while. Nothing I got out of those programs was more powerful than the single awareness that there's people like me who are struggling with this. And that was extremely powerful. And for anyone who's out there, they're struggling in isolation. And that's one of the biggest just venomous things about any form of addiction is you don't want to talk about it. You're embarrassed about it. You avoid it. You don't think you have a problem. And to go into a room with people who look just like me, people who look nothing at all like me, and we could all just say, oh my gosh, this was hard, and I struggle with this. It was liberating. It was like a weight off my shoulders, and it was a conversation that I couldn't necessarily have with my coworkers or my employees or my wife even at the time, because we were still going through a lot of stuff. So that was number one step for me, was like just find some support group, more for just the association. A larger, more symbolic thing that happened, which I think comes back around to your point of knowing yourself, was when I eliminated alcohol, it was like a huge veil of honesty of where I was at in life was lifted. that I realized how much I was suppressing and sedating to avoid the truths in relationships, profitability with the business, the coworkers and employees that I had had at the time. And I had realized, man, there's a lot of problems right now that I can now see clearly. And I would have never seen that because I was effectively avoiding it and using that addiction as a way to just tune it out.
Makes so much sense. Yeah, it's a mask, if you will, or a way to completely stay on the surface and not go any deeper and pretend everything's okay. Wow. Mm-hmm. This was a process, but did you feel like there was a point where it just got easy?
Honestly, it was easy from the beginning because I knew what was at stake if I did not stay committed. It was my marriage. It was my relationships with my kids as they became young ladies and young women and then adults. It was my health. It was my livelihood, my business. All of this, I could choose to drink or I could choose to have that. And where the difference was is I knew that I wouldn't lose it immediately. I wouldn't lose it like in a fiery flame. I mean, I honestly feel like I had matured enough at that point where maybe I could drink a little bit and it would have been okay. But I was in the zero risk tolerance department. So my friend, he worked for NASA briefly at JPL in Pasadena. And we went through the machine shop there for the Mars rover, the big one they lowered onto Mars years back. And he told me that this machine shop has their tolerance for failure is 0%. Nothing can fail here because if it does, billions of dollars are wasted because some pulley didn't work. And then the Mars rover that you've been working on for 5 years doesn't get deployed. And I took that same analogy and I thought to myself, even if I think I can handle it, I don't want to risk it because the risk of losing that is so much worse off than the temporal pleasure of a drink. And later on, I found that there's just so much hassle involved in drinking. I actually enjoy it truly, not just to not drink because it's a much different experience that I love. Actually, Vegas is one of my favorite places to go as a sober guy, which you're actually like, what, Russ? Like, that's crazy because that's the antithesis of sobriety is in Las Vegas. But my first trip to Vegas was with my wife, and I was like, oh my God, this is the longest Vegas trip I've ever taken because I'm up early, I'm refreshed, I'm doing stuff, but I learned this new lens of experiences. But it was easy because there was so much at stake to lose that I wasn't willing to risk losing.
It's such a good question that if anyone is listening who might be considering, quitting drinking or quitting XYZ, that's a good question to ask yourself. What do I have to lose? And if there's any answer that you're not willing to accept, that could be a way to navigate through the process of whether or not you want to stop drinking. You say something in the book and you say for all of the men who have thought once, twice, or 100 times, maybe I should quit drinking, this book is for you. So even if you've thought once, it's worth checking in. And Vegas is an interesting place. And I think that that my experience in living in Vegas and having what's called Sin City for a reason, but having alcohol and just the hours of Vegas be in the culture. And I was in a startup community full of entrepreneurs in Vegas, and it just seemed like, talk about double down on all of the things that lead to the most stress you can imagine. I think that was my experience.
Well, and I love this video game. I was born in the 80s, so I remember the original Nintendo and all the video games that came along with it. But the analogy that I love to give is, and this is really great for the person. I mean, that doesn't have crazy problems, but maybe is a social drinker or a social whatever addiction. It's I look at it as like going into the video game settings and going to the level difficulty, and you just go to the hard mode and
Yeah.
you select hard. Like I could be like, you're drinking and I'm not. We're playing the same video game level. You're still scoring all the points. You're collecting the coins. You're saving the princess. But when you're drinking, the level is on hard. So it's just tougher versus the person who's not. So from forget life changing life trees and all of the philosophical stuff. If you're just looking for like the best life hack, the optimal way of living, like to be better than your competition, there's no cleaner, easier way. I mean, it's just like it's living life on an easier level of difficulty.
It's so true. It's such a good analogy. Yeah, you just choose. You're like, okay, here I go. Oh, wow. So let's fast forward. So you you work on your relationship with your your marriage, and you continue to move down the entrepreneurial path. When did Design Pickle come into play here?
Well, Design Pickle was, I think, the only happened because of that clarity that I had mentioned. Once the veil of the stress and the challenges and all of the shit that I had gone through was starting to dissipate into the ether, I took a hard look at my business that I had at the time, which was this agency, this kind of ambiguous agency with a partner in Argentina. And we had decided, we kind of put together this business model theory that, hey, the US dollar is stronger than the Argentine peso. What if we had our labor pool down there for branding and design and all of this? We ran client services out of Scottsdale, but then use global economics to just try to ink out a better margin. And on paper, it was a great plan. And the team down there was amazing. My partner, we're still friends to this day. But there were so many problems, and I was probably one of the largest problems, and because this was when I was drinking, that we just never were able to fully materialize profits. Like we were doing not at anything substantial, but like $2-3 million in top line revenue with like zero or negative profits. Like we would lose money some months. So when I got a clear head, I just was like, this sucks. Like I just don't want to be in an agency anymore. It's like a creative version of being a used car salesman. Like you're just trying to sell people stuff and pitch them on things and ideas that you have, and sometimes they like it, and sometimes they don't, and you got to deal with a lot of headache. So I left that business. Just walked away, didn't get anything from it. Luckily got out of the relationship without any challenge, and my partner knew. But Design Pickle was stemmed in part from that outsourced design experience that I had. And then when I was consulting after the agency, I looked at when my clients were truly really happy. And they were when they were like we were just designing business cards and Facebook ads and really basic stuff in a relatively easy way, in a streamlined way. And I thought like, I know this isn't sexy. This isn't, $250,000 branding strategies like I was doing before, or, trade show launches at Dreamforce where Green Day is playing in San Francisco. But clients are happy. It seems like there's a market for it because no one's really doing this in scale very well. And I just kind of put it together. I had a couple good books I read on quick launching startup type products, and ended up launching Design Pickle in January 2015, which was also about 14 months ish since I had gotten sober afterwards. So that, to me, I know those two things are correlated, because had I not cleared my world and my mind and my mental capacity, I would have never really had this intuition to be able to connect the dots and identify this need for a easier way to procure graphic design. in like kind of the on-demand model that we do.
Was there a why not now moment with Design Pickle? Do you remember thinking about it and saying, all right, we're going?
Yeah. Well, in the post-mortem of the agency, I sat down, a really smart guy, really, I call him my friend, although I don't know if he knows we're friends, but I say we're friends. His name's Taylor Pearson, and he's a great author, just an incredible mind, younger guy, but like he's the guy with the Medium article. When you pull it up, it's like average read time 20 minutes, and you're like, okay, gotta sit down. Yeah, I gotta bunker down for this one. But I had worked with him briefly as a coaching client because I was just searching for answers in 2013, 2014. Like, what should I do? Where should I go? And he said, Russ, make a list of everything that you want in your lifestyle, from really specific things to the physical things to the kind of, do you go to an office? Do you not go to an office? Like, what are the ancillary things of the business? Don't get stuck in the weeds of what you want to do. So I was like, okay, cool. And I made this list, and it was like, just random stuff. I mean, at that time, I only had $2 or so on one of the items was like procreate, like have another kid. And then he said, okay, look at that list. What kind of business would you need to have in order to create this lifestyle? And later on, I found a lot of this process was actually Ray Dalio's methodologies, which he just outlined in his new book, Principles, which is a really great book. But the list of musts, which we ended up calling the decision filter, were things like, okay, if I want to travel with my family, I need to have a business that's kind of remote friendly or location independent. And I remember I put, okay, I want a business with recurring revenue because I hated chasing down invoices and I didn't want to have that anymore. So I had this outcomes, these things I wanted, and then I had this filters, these things that kind of had to kind of be present in order for me to achieve the outcomes. And then months went by and I just was consulting. And the aha moment came in December of 2014. And I was reading a book, and this book outlines the kind of like business of this company called WP Curve, which is a WordPress update site that you could do on a subscription model. And I was reading this book and I was like, wait a minute. I am with my consulting clients, I'm doing design kind of like this company does WordPress support. And then I got my list out that me and Taylor met, and I was like, all right, I have this idea for this business, but I need to consult my lists first. Does this business, can I do it remotely? Yes, I'm already doing it remotely. Is there recurring revenue? I'll make it recurring revenue. We'll sell it on a subscription.
I love that. I'll make it recurring.
Yeah, so that was like how we decided. And I went through this list. And the aha moment was when I basically got to the end of the list and I was like, this qualifies. This business idea qualifies. Like, this is the idea that I can use. And so I basically went out to the marketplace and created the brand and did everything. And then we launched that January, like less than 30 days later. But I knew what I wanted out of the business prior to having the idea itself. And that to me was the secret weapon. And to today, we still maintain those principles for myself within the business with and
still have your list.
All those things. Exactly.
Okay, I love this concept of the list, and I've heard it sounds kind of similar. Someone once gave me the advice of, rather than thinking about what you want to do next in the business, design your day, design your perfect day, and what that looks. It sounds somewhat similar, but I like how you are able to put this into bigger buckets and guidelines, and then. Just for those listeners who maybe haven't heard, but I'm sure you probably have, but Design Pickle is a partner of ours, and what it is you pay a monthly fee, and you are able to get unlimited designs. And it's incredible. And a lot of people think it's just too good to be true. So coming from the ad agency world myself and marketing, when I first learned about Design Pickle, I was like, wait, what? Explain this to me. Then learning more about your business model. And like, I'm on the first name basis with my designer. And it really does, work. It's like almost like you were getting an MBA in your first business with your agency to learn about what you could do.
Oh, man.
And
more like the School of Hard Knocks.
Okay, sure. A PhD.
Yeah,
A really
PhD in
rough.
The School of Hard Knocks.
I have one of those too, maybe a few. So your business model is really unique, and can you tell us anything more about how you've been able to set this up and what you think your secret sauce is? And you don't want to give it away necessarily, but what you think is so unique about this, and also the biggest misunderstanding too. So let's start first. What's so unique about Design Pickle?
Well, as someone who's ever worked with a creative resource in their life that's not Design Pickle, there's really a matter of the economics are really skewed in the sense that most of the time the creator, the agency, the freelancer, whoever it is, they are determining the value. They're determining their price. And so as a consumer who's procuring designs, you go find someone who kind of meets where you're at. So you'll interview people, you'll interview agencies, you'll interview in-house designers, you'll go find people online. But it's ultimately this game of just like variability of pricing dynamics, which is really uncommon. You don't really have that in many other circumstances of consuming things, except for with people resources. Like if I'm going to go rent an office, I know what the price ranges are, and here's the prices. If I'm going to go buy a computer, here are the prices, and it's very transactional. So the biggest thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to create something that was a known quantity across the board of the experience, from the initial pricing to the process to the parameters of the service and how you use it, and really just level the playing field. And it turns out that pissed off a lot of people, because all of a sudden we get so many trolls online attacking us for like, you are disassembling my Rhode Island Art Institute degree I paid $100,000 for. It's like, well, sorry, buddy. But ultimately, like, we just wanted things to be straightforward and easy. And as a business guy, like my agency was anything but when I had it. My agency was like smoke and mirrors of pricing and here's what we think and all of this. And so I just saw the opportunity to create a disruptive consumption model for a service that normally was done one way. And it's a lofty analogy, but it's no different than, say, Uber. Like Uber created a different way to consume transportation. Mm-hmm. They didn't invent transportation. They just created a different way to get transportation in a certain way. And you could get that transportation, or you could still get a cab, or you could still hire your limo, or you can do whatever you normally do. And that's ultimately what we framed it is like just an option for a different way to procure the design work that we do.
And you've democratized the space too, to where these creative services often aren't affordable to small businesses or entrepreneurs, or, it's what I love about it is I know I can do some things in terms of design to get by if I have to, but I know it's not what I'm good at and what I'm uniquely qualified to do. And therefore it's a liability of my time, right? So it's just because you can doesn't always mean you should in terms of where you're spending your time and resources. And the company has really blown up, hasn't it? I mean, the world has responded. And I've seen some of the reports and your interviews out there. But are you willing to share a little bit about your growth pace and what the trajectory's been like?
Absolutely. I mean, when we launched with zero. I wasn't part of any startup funding incubator or anything. It was me and all right, here we go. But we've grown every year. We've more than doubled. We did about $300,000 our first year, and then we did $1.6 million last year, and we're on track to do about $5.5 million this year, and we're already on track to do about $10 million next year. So the vote of the consumer is in, and they like easy to use design, but that growth wouldn't be possible without the clarity in what we were doing, and also just a relentless pursuit of creating options in the design world. And I have to give a nod to some of the pioneers, the 99 Designs, the Fivers, these online marketplaces. I mean, they really paved the way for us. And sometimes those are better solutions for just specific design needs. But ultimately, the challenge, I was just having a conversation at lunch about this, is like marketplaces are always governed by earning a commission based on the total volume of transactions within the marketplace. So an eBay or an Uber or a 99 Designs, they're going to make a commission off of the total volume of things going through the pipeline. So those businesses are incentivized to grow the total transactions happening, and they really don't care so much about the lifetime value of a customer as so much as they do like how many customers can they get. Mm-hmm. And we're completely the opposite because we're flat rate. Like if you have a problem, which spoiler alert, you will, no matter what design person you use, whether it's us or somebody else, we're incentivized to fix the problem because you mean something. Like you're a known quantity. We know who you are. You're a name. You and your designer have a relationship. Like there's value to you sticking around. So we're gonna dive into that, and we're not gonna berate you. We're not gonna lecture you on design aesthetics. We're gonna always try to make you look better, but there is that more like, I don't know, friendly approach is the way I like to put it, that just kind of is missing, I feel. Mm-hmm. I mean, and if you look at the people who hate us on Twitter, they keep us in business because I call them the underemployed design community. They're like, it's like, guys, your lack of success is not because of Design Pickle. Your lack of success is because of your
attitude.
Whatever. Yeah, attitude. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've seen it too. I couldn't agree more. Well, congratulations on the success. And I just think it's really cool that this is stemmed out of the clarity that you've reached. And so is there something you've been thinking about doing that now's the time to ask yourself, why not now?
How profound does my answer have to be? Because I've listened to a lot of the episodes, but I'm like, my thing is not that profound.
Mark Cuban's was to get better apps and actually get some like apps. So it can be anything. I've heard it. I want to find a girlfriend. I've heard I want to world peace. I mean, bring it.
So I wrote this down this morning. I would really like to learn how to play polo. The prerequisite, which I actually learned once when I was in Argentina, very popular place for polo, is I first need to learn how to ride a horse. Because I've tried playing polo before, but I don't know how to ride a horse, and it was quite a disaster.
It's like learning how to ice skate before you play ice hockey.
Correct.
Yes.
But they threw me into a match, and I was literally on a field geared up on a horse, like not even knowing how to control the horse or what to do. And the horses speak Spanish down there, so like it was nothing. Like I didn't even know.
So you're at the hard level on the video game.
I was at the hard level, and that was when I was drinking. They did have wine at lunch before the polo.
So yeah, I think
it's right next to a big equestrian area here, our office in Scottsdale. I think there's something really beautiful about horses, and I'd love to get into that and learn the sport and all of that. So I think that's going to be my thing in 2018. Awesome.
This is good news. I'm excited for you, especially as someone who's recently gotten into horses, and you can even borrow my Horses for Dummies book if you'd like.
Oh, really? No way.
There really is one. No, I just, they are magical creatures. And of course that's part one. And then part two is learning how to race at Mach speed and have a tool in your hand and all that kind of stuff. But just in general, I think you're going to enjoy being around these animals more, and they teach us stuff about ourselves that we don't realize. Well, there you go. What's your first step?
Find a teacher. Find a horse lesson teacher nearby.
A horse lesson teacher?
What do you? I don't even know what you call them. I don't even know what to put into Google.
I think horse trainer.
Oh, horse trainer? Okay.
Someone said the other day, they were talking about religion, and they were saying, some people are Catholic, some people are Presbyterian. I'm equestrian. That's my religion. I think that'll do. And I know exactly the area you're talking about there in Scottsdale, and you can't find a better place. So, okay, we'll follow back up with that. A couple of rapid fire questions, and then we'll wrap up. So what are you reading right now?
Oh, man. Right now, I am reading the Walter Isaacson Benjamin Franklin biography.
Oh, I have. How funny you mentioned that. I have it, and I've been reading it for a while. It's a big one. I love him, and I think we share Tim Ferriss as someone we really admire, and he won't ever stop talking about it.
He's a friend of mine. He doesn't know we're friends, actually.
There you go. Well, Walter Isaacson, he just came out with Leonardo da Vinci, too. I heard him interviewed, and hopefully get him on the show someday. Incredible. And you did mention 2 books that you read when you were starting Design Pickle. Was The Lean Startup one of them?
No, it was actually 7-Day Startup by Dan Norris. Even a leaner book than Lean Startup. That was the one. I don't remember the other book I mentioned, though.
Awesome. I'll include that in our show notes. Okay, so you're in a pickle. You're stressed. What's the first thing you do?
Meditate.
Right on. And what keeps you up at night?
Like kind of aliens, but not like in a crazy way. Like I'm not worried about Independence Day style. I'm more about like, if you ever seen Intergalactic, like the like what happens when we sort of realize what else is out there. And I just think about it a lot. I don't know.
Interesting.
More like the philosophy of aliens than like alien invasions. That's what keeps me up at night.
No, that's an interesting, very thoughtful question and topic to keep you up at. I bet you have some interesting dreams.
Yeah.
Pirates or ninjas? Who's tougher?
Ninjas, for sure.
You think ninjas are tougher?
Yes, because they are. Well, my wife is half Japanese. She's born in Japan, where a lot of ninjas live, and they have to weather a lot of outdoor elements beyond just the salty sea. I'll buy
it. And what advice would you give to your younger self, Russ?
Aside from quit drinking, I would probably say stop seeking answers elsewhere. Everything's inside of you.
I love that. It's an inside job. Wow, that's a good one. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I have a lot of other questions here that we didn't even get to and topics, so we'll have to just bring you back on the show. But thank you so much for everything and sharing your story, being vulnerable. It's not every day that men or women, especially men, feel that they can share their stories so openly. And it's powerful work that you're doing. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Amy Jo. It was my pleasure.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?